The America that I love, the America that I've written about for 50 years, that's been a beacon of hope and liberty around the world, is currently in the hands of a corrupt, incompetent, racist, reckless, and treasonous administration. Tonight, we ask all of you to join with us in choosing hope over fear, democracy over authoritarianism, the rule of law over lawlessness, ethics over unbridled corruption, resistance over complacency, unity over division, and peace over war.
That was Bruce Springsteen, a mic drop moment from him. Bruce Springsteen kicking off his Land of Hope tour in Minnesota, where 2 American citizens were murdered by Trump administration federal agents. Bruce Springsteen is no stranger to having the courage and the standing to criticize Donald Trump. What is unusual and what he may have been a part of ushering in is the growing permission structure to do that. Now, what's really a plot twist is that it's also coming from diehard Trump allies. And I can't believe I'm about to say this on this program, but please watch Alex Jones.
When your ankles swell up 3 times the size they were before, that means heart failure. And he does look sick. And he does babble and, sound like the brain's not doing too hot. And so we just cut bait on Trump and we just mobilize against the Democrats. We need to be sad about Trump. This is not funny. This is not good. But he's gone. And that's it. We need to pray for Trump, that the Holy Spirit touch his heart and loose him from whatever evil control he's under. I'm serious. And I think that's the answer. We need to pray for President Trump. We need to pray for other people to be awakened.
Again, I did not assemble a political coalition, and nor did I vote as a part of it that includes Alex Jones, but Donald Trump did. And that's what Alex Jones has to say. Quote, he does babble, quote, he's gone. Michelle.
I'm going to be very careful here in talking about someone's health because that is, a delicate situation. And yet he is the president of the United States at a time when we are facing all kinds of serious issues, and the public deserves answers about his health. And when the White House brags about him acing a cognitive test, you have to ask, someone usually only takes a cognitive test if there is reason to suspect that there are issues around mental acuity. When they say that the bruises on his hands are a result of vigorous handshaking, it's just not the kind of explanation that makes sense. So, on the health issue, there are legitimate concerns, and Americans need real answers to that. On the politics of this, in terms of the coalitions that are being built and the permission structure to speak out against Donald Trump, not just on his health, but on his politics in general, I think those floodgates are now open. In part because of the pain that people are feeling across several sectors of their life. They're concerned about the war. They're concerned about rising prices. And they're very concerned about the direction of the country. And instead of providing anything in that feels like balm or even a cogent explanation, people are not getting that. And I doubt that they're going to hear much of that this evening, even though the president is going to make an address to the nation.
You two, I believe, were on this program, if not the day after Trump won a second time, but that week. Michelle, you were here the day after. What is different, and the reason we track this is because what Donald Trump did in the first year was what Timothy Snyder writes about on page 1 of On Tyranny, right? Gets people to obey in advance. But that is based on a misperception of political power and strength, right? So here are the people who have attacked Donald Trump in the last 10 days. Joe Rogan calling all MAGA supporters, quote, dorks. Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Sean Ryan, Alex Jones, timber shed. I mean, the list could go on for longer than we're left on the air today. And the substance of what they're saying isn't new at all, right? I mean, it isn't new. You know, Laura Ingraham saying yesterday, quote, "I wonder if he can take it in," the briefings that he's getting on Iran. I think is a concern that the people have voiced about him. Bob Corker, who was a Republican senator from Tennessee, introduced legislation to remove an American president's nuclear authorities for the first time in our country's history because he called the West Wing, quote, adult daycare. That was during Trump's first term. I think that was in either 2017 or 18. But Mark Elias, what is new is that this time Trump isn't just doing things that are unpopular. He isn't just ignoring the will of the people or ignoring the will of 92% of the country if he decides to escalate the war in Iran to a ground invasion. He is now defying the loudest voices in his own political coalition. What happens next?
Yeah, so look, at the risk of quoting a well-known conservative, Andrew Breitbart was right that politics is downstream of culture, and it's particularly true on the right. And you know, Donald Trump's power, as you point out, was not just a sense that the public was behind him, but that the culture, and particularly the culture on the right, was all about him. And, you know, that was the manosphere, and that was these very prominent conservatives, and this idea that, like, he was not, even if he was babbling and even if he was incoherent and even if he was, you know, whatever he wanted to call it, he was still culturally on top of it. And now he's underneath it. And when that happens, you know, politics shifts really fast. You know, like some things in politics move slow and some move fast and some move slower than you think and then faster than you think. And we're in the slower than you think, faster than you think. And what's happening now is that Donald Trump is just losing control of the culture that buoyed his power. And once he loses that, he loses a big part of what it is that Republicans down ballot fear from him, which is that if they don't go along with him, these cultural figures, that you'll have this rising up of right-wing figures, and that's just not happening. And so, you know, whether Republicans are fast enough to get ahead of it or not, I don't know. I suspect they're already too slow, and it's probably too late, and that they will face the wrath of the voters this November because they stood with him too long. But it also means that he will be more desperate and more dangerous because he will cling to the worst of the worst voices that are still with him and do the most extreme things that he possibly can. And that is why we all need to stay vigilant as we head towards November.
Yeah, and I mean, look, whatever you think of him, he's got his hands on the steering wheel for 3 more years of our country, of our democracy, of our military, the Justice Department. Michelle, one piece of this that I find interesting, there's some polling that suggests that women view listening to Joe Rogan's podcast as one of the red flags. It's like up there with, you know, living at home in your 30s. The virility piece seems to have slipped well away from the MAGA movement. What do you make of the opportunity right now for Democrats?
There's a great opportunity for them to reach across the aisle, to come with solutions, to come with a message, to actually attract people to, you know, a big tent and figure out how to show people that there is a place for them. Because there are a lot of people who, at the end of this Trump era, will feel like they don't have a political home. And I don't know if we're going to see more third-party candidates or more fracturing, but there is an opportunity, you know, for them to reach out. I just want to reach back to something that Mark said about the danger of this moment, though, just to cap what we were talking about and Donald Trump being in a rather dangerous position, because normally the polls that you mentioned, the way that his coalition is turning against him, usually that would have a leveling effect, that there would be some humility that people would demonstrate. You would think that they would, you know, kind of tone things down a little bit. I don't think that we should expect that from Donald Trump. I mean, he operates on a hot gust of retribution, and I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And instead of trying to reach for an olive branch, I think he's going to pick up a really big stick. And I think that that's going to cause a lot of pain for a lot of people as a result.